Okay, this is another weight problem. You are given a triangle. Now the length of the triangle here, the length of the side is A, the length of the side here is B, and the length of the side here is C. Now you're given that the angle has three angles. Definitely, you can see you have 2x negative 30, x plus 60, and 2x negative 50. Now we are told to determine the weight of column A and then the quantity in column B, and to determine whether they are equal or which of them is greater. Or maybe the information we are given is not sufficient to determine the weight of the two quantities. Anyway, before I begin to solve this question, I want to quickly explain something to you in case you have forgotten. What I want to explain is reference angles. So for example, maybe you were told to find the cosine of let's say, so what I want to discuss now is just reference angles. Now assuming you were told to find the cosine of 60. Now the cosine of 60 equals plus or minus the cosine of the reference angle. So I'm just going to call this cosine of r. So the cosine of 60 equals plus or minus the cosine of the reference angle. That is cosine of 60. Now, initially when you look at what I wrote here, it might not really make sense to you, but when I explain some things to you, it will make lots of sense. So whenever you recall your four cardinal points, so you have something like this. So it goes from 0, then when you go around here, you would have covered 90 degrees. When you come here, you would have covered 180 degrees. When you come here, you would have covered 270 degrees. And when you come down here, you would have covered 360 degrees. So the angle you have here is cosine of 60 degrees. Now, cosine of 60 degrees, to find the cosine of 60 degrees, you need to first find the reference angle. That's, you need to first find r. Now, 60 degrees, you start from here and then you draw a line following the counterclockwise direction. Counterclockwise, that is the opposite side of the way a clock is meant to rotate. So you go like this until you cover 60 degrees. So this is angle 60 degrees. Now the reference angle is the angle which the line you drew here makes with the horizontal axis, the acute angle. So the reference angle is the acute angle. The acute angle which the terminal angle makes with the horizontal axis. So in case you already know what I want to explain to you, you can fast forward this video to like say 5 minutes or 6 minutes to skip this part. So this part is just for those who do not really have or have forgotten this area that I want to explain. So what you have here is 60 degrees. So now we know that this is going to be equal to the cosine of 60 degrees. Now, which sign am I going to put? Is it going to be a positive or a negative sign? Again, you would recall that when you were doing trigonometry, we said any angle that falls within 0 and 90 degrees, then it is all positive. That is, the trigonometric function of all angles between 0 and 90 degrees is all positive. Now, whenever any angle falls between 90 and 180 degrees, this is the region of sine. This is for sine. And then any angle that falls between 180 and 270 degrees, this is the region of the region of tangent. While any region that falls between 270 and 360, this is the region of cosine. That is, the cosine of all angles between 270 and 360 is positive, while other trigonometric functions, it is negative. And then the same thing happens here. So a very good way to remember this formula is, this is just ACTS. That is ACT. ACTS. So Since the angle we drew here is 60 degrees and it fell in all positive, so it implies that we are going to choose plus. So that is the cosine of 60 is just simply the cosine of 60 degrees, just as it implies. But this is for the first example. But what if you're told to find, let's say, the cosine of 100 degrees? Now, how do you do that? So again, to find the cosine of 100 degrees, what we said is the cosine equals plus or minus the cosine of the reference angle. Plus or minus the cosine of the reference angle. That is, to find the cosine of 100, we need to first find the reference angle, then whichever quadrant 100 degrees lies will determine which sign is going to take. Now, to find the reference angle, all I need to do is I'm going to have to draw this. So again, 100, this is 0, this is 90, and this is 180 degrees, or this is 270 degrees, and this is 360 degrees. So you have to go this way until you cover 100. So you go like this. So this is 100 degrees. Now what you'd observe is that 100 degrees, we are told to find the cosine of 100 degrees. So my aim is I want to find the reference angle. So this is 100 degrees. So the reference angle is the angle which this line makes with the horizontal axis. Now there are two angles it makes with the horizontal axis. This is one, while this is another one. But what we said is the acute angle, that is the smaller one, the one that is less than 90 degrees, is the one we are going to choose. So, and then that is 80 degrees. So that tells us that this angle here is going to be the cosine of 80 degrees. But then which sign is it going to take? Is it going to be positive or negative? Now, looking at this here, you would observe that we are told to find the cosine of an angle that fell in the sine region. Now, since this angle does not fall in its region, this is the region of cosine, then it has to be negative. But assuming assuming this line here fell in the region, say maybe you are told to find the cosine of 290, then that's going to fall in the region, and that will be positive. But since it fell in a region which is not in its domain, it's going to be negative. All right. Having knowledge of this, let's go back to the question. The question we have here says, find this. Now the thing is that before I begin to make any move, I need to begin to look for clues that will help me in solving this problem. Now the first clue I can observe here is, you observe this is a triangle, and then the sum of angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So that is when you sum this angle, and then you sum this angle, you should have 180 degrees. So let's sum. So what this implies, it implies that when you sum 2x negative 30 plus x plus 60 plus 2x negative 50, so this should give us 180 degrees. Now to sum this is 2x plus x is 3x plus 2x, that's going to give us 5x. Then negative 30 plus 60 negative 50 is going to give us negative 20, so equals 180 degrees. So to solve for x, I'm going to add 20 to both sides. What you have is 5x equals 200, and then we divide both sides by 5, so this goes off. So what you have here is going to be 40, so your x equals 40. So in other words, since x is 40, so to find this angle here, so this angle here is just going to be 2 times 40, which is 80 minus 30, that's 50. So this angle here is 50 degrees. So here is 40 plus 60, so the angle here is 100 degrees. And here is 2 times 40, which is 80 minus 50, that is 30 degrees. Now, I'm going to draw this triangle. I'm going to draw this same triangle below. So what you have here is this. This is the triangle we have there. You have this, you have this, and then you have this. So this is what you have. And then we found above that here is 50 degrees. We found that here is 30 degrees. And then we also found that here is 100 degrees. And then here is A, here is B, while here is C. Now what I want to do in this video is I want to try and determine a relationship, because what we have here is A, C, and B. So I want to try and see if I can determine a relationship between A, B, and C based on this triangle here. Now what would come to your mind is that this is B here, while this is 100 here. Now you can remember your cosine rule. I'm very sure you went through this in your undergraduate studies. So the cosine rule says that the square of this, so the square of the one facing here, that is b squared equals the square of the other two sides, as if you're doing the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus c squared. Now negative 2ac, then cosine of the angle you have here, cosine of 100 degrees. So b squared equals a squared plus c squared, negative 2ac cosine of 100 degrees. Now you would see that I already have a b square and I also have an a squared plus c squared in my equation here. That's what I have here. Now, but then what I showed you here, I showed you that the cosine of 100 equals a negative cosine of 80 degrees. So this is just going to be the same thing as a squared plus c squared. So negative cosine is just going to be negative 2ac times negative cosine of 80 degrees. So negative times negative is going to be positive. So this is going to be a squared plus c squared plus 2ac cosine of 80 degrees. So I'm going to write this up. So it's what I'm doing. So what we obtain below is we obtain b squared to be equal to a squared plus c squared, then plus 2ac, then cosine of 80 degrees. This was exactly what we obtained. Now the cosine of 80 degrees is a positive number, that is a number greater than 0. So an AC is also greater than 0. So this whole number we have here is some positive number that is greater than 0. So what I have here is a squared plus c squared, and then what I have here is b squared. But then b squared, we said b squared is just a squared plus c squared. That is what we have here, plus some positive number, some positive number. So if b squared equals the quantity a plus some positive number, so without mincing words, you would agree with me that b squared has to be greater than a squared plus c squared. Now since b squared is greater than a squared plus c squared, then the solution to this problem has to be b. Yeah, thanks for watching.